The bar was too small for the way the room went quiet. I stood under a flickering spotlight, fingers tight around the microphone, feeling the weight of eyes that didn't expect much from me. The air smelled like whiskey, dust, and old promises. This wasn't a place where lives changed. It was where dreams came to rest. Still, the moment I started to sing, something shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible, like a breath being held. Halfway through the song, I noticed her. She stood near the back, posture straight, expression controlled, eyes sharp with a kind of attention that didn't belong in a bar like this. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't filming. She was listening. And for reasons I couldn't explain, my chest tightened as if my voice had reached a place it wasn't supposed to. I didn't know who she was. I only knew the way her gaze made my skin warm, the way my voice steadied instead of shaking. Each note felt deliberate, exposed. I sang like I was being measured, like someone was deciding something important without saying it out loud. When the song ended, the applause came late and uneven. I stepped off the stage, pretending not to look for her, but she was already there, close, intent. The space between us felt charged, electric in a way that had nothing to do with music. "You shouldn't be singing here," she said quietly. "Why not?" I asked. She hesitated, eyes dropping briefly to my mouth before meeting mine again. "Because voices like yours don't disappear. If you want to know who she really is, why she was there, and what happened after that night, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments. Have you ever met someone who changed everything? Before you even knew their name? I was 29 when I finally stopped pretending my life was temporary. People like to call it a phase when a woman sings in bars for tips and cheap applause, but phases usually come with an exit plan. Mine didn't. I lived in a narrow apartment above a closed laundromat, paid my rent in cash when I could, and sang 5 nights a week at the Bluebird, a place so small it felt like the walls leaned in to listen. I told myself I stayed because I loved the music. The truth was simpler. This was where my voice still belonged. My name is Hannah Reed. I write my own songs. I always have. They're not loud, not clever, not designed to sell anything. They sit somewhere between confession and memory. People either lean forward when I sing, or they don't hear me at all. I'd learned to live with both reactions. What I hadn't learned was how to stop hoping for more. The night she walked in, I wasn't expecting anything different. I stepped onto the stage like I always did, adjusting the microphone, nodding to the bartender, letting my eyes skim the room without really seeing it. Regulars, couples, one man asleep with his beer half finished. And then, her. She hadn't been there before. I noticed because she didn't look like she was hiding from anything. She looked like she was observing. She sat alone, back straight, hands folded loosely around a glass she barely touched. Dark blazer, clean lines, controlled posture. Not from around here. Her eyes followed me as I took my place, and something about that focus made my skin warm. Not flattered. Seen. I had the unsettling feeling she wasn't just listening to the song. I was being evaluated by my silence, my breath, the way I stood. I sang anyway. The first note steadied me. The second opened something familiar in my chest. By the time I reached the chorus, I forgot about the room entirely. I forgot about her. I sang the way I always did, honest, exposed, a little reckless. When the last note faded, the applause was polite but thin. I didn't look for her as I stepped off the stage. I didn't need to. I felt her before I saw her. "You shouldn't be singing here." Her voice was low, controlled, almost gentle. I turned, surprised by how close she stood. Up close, she smelled like clean soap and something sharper. Citrus, maybe. Her eyes were darker than I'd thought. Focused. Curious. "And yet," I said, lifting an eyebrow, "here I am." She smiled then. Not wide. Not easy. Something restrained. "It's a waste." That should have annoyed me. Instead, it sparked something hot and immediate in my stomach. "You don't even know me," I replied. "I know voices," she said, "and I know when one doesn't belong in a room like this." I crossed my arms, suddenly aware of the heat between us, the way her gaze lingered just a second too long on my mouth. "And what exactly does a voice like mine belong to?" She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Somewhere louder," she said. "Somewhere honest." I laughed softly. "This is honest." She looked at me like she was recalculating. "Then you should protect it." The bartender interrupted with a question about her drink, breaking the moment. She turned away, paid, then looked back at me once more. "I'm Evelyn. she said. No last name. No explanation. Hannah? She repeated my name quietly, as if testing how it sounded. Then she left. I told myself she was just another stranger passing through, another moment I'd overanalyze later in the dark. But when I woke up the next morning, my body still remembered the way she'd stood too close, the way her voice had pressed against mine. And that night, when I stepped back onto the stage, I caught myself scanning the room, wondering if she'd come back. She came back the next night. I noticed her before I finished setting up the microphone, that same quiet certainty settling in my chest. Evelyn stood near the bar this time, jacket off, sleeves rolled just enough to show her wrists. She looked less guarded, like someone who had already decided to stay. The thought shouldn't have mattered. It did. I sang differently knowing she was there. Slower, lower. My voice curved around the words instead of pushing through them. I didn't look at her directly, not at first, but I felt her attention like a physical thing. Steady, deliberate. When I reached the last note, the applause came quicker this time. Louder. I caught her eye then, just for a second. She didn't clap. She nodded. Approval without performance. She waited until I stepped down again. You changed the tempo, she said, handing me a napkin from the bar. Her fingers brushed mine, accidentally. Not enough to be nothing. You noticed, I replied. I listen, she said. It's my worst habit. I laughed, softer than I meant to. Up close, she felt different tonight, less distant. Her gaze lingered openly now, tracing my face without apology. It made my skin prickle. So, I asked, do you always critique strangers? Or am I special? She tilted her head. You're specific. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one. We sat at a small table near the back after my set. She ordered whiskey again. Neat. I stuck with water, suddenly aware of how sharp the moment felt, like a line I'd already crossed without noticing. We talked about music first, what we hated, what we couldn't stand to hear anymore. She didn't talk about what she loved. Not yet. You don't sing covers, she said eventually. I don't know how to pretend someone else's words fit me, I replied. Her mouth curved. That explains a lot. About what? Why you make people uncomfortable, she said calmly. I should have taken offense. Instead, heat bloomed low in my stomach. You seem fine, I said. I am, she answered. Then, after a pause, but I'm not most people. The way she said it felt like an invitation, or a warning. We walked outside together when the bar started to empty. The night air was thick, warm, buzzing with distant traffic. She stood close enough that our arms brushed when we moved. Neither of us stepped away. You ever think about leaving this place? She asked. All the time, I said. I just don't know where I'd go. She studied my face, serious now. You should be careful with voices like yours. I laughed under my breath. You already said that. Yes, she replied, eyes dropping briefly to my mouth. But now I mean it. The silence between us shifted, charged. I could feel my pulse in my throat. If I leaned in, just a fraction, I knew she wouldn't move away. The realization sent a sharp thrill through me. You're thinking something, I said. She exhaled slowly. I am. We say it. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Her fingers were warm, steady. The touch landed somewhere deep, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with skin. I shouldn't, she said quietly. But you are, I replied, my voice barely steady. Her hand lingered. The space between us closed without either of us stepping forward. Her breath brushed my cheek. My entire body felt alert, waiting. Then she pulled back. I'll see you tomorrow, she said. It wasn't a question. She walked away before I could respond, leaving my skin buzzing, my thoughts tangled, my body unmistakably aware of what had almost happened. That night, alone in my apartment, I couldn't stop replaying the way she'd touched me. Gentle, controlled, intentional. Whatever Evelyn was running from, it had nothing to do with me, and yet somehow, I had the unsettling sense that I was already standing in the middle of it. She didn't wait for me to finish my set that night. When I stepped off the stage, Evelyn was already there, leaning against the wall near the hallway that led to the storage room. The bar was louder than usual, laughter, glasses clinking, a song on the jukebox fighting for attention. But the moment our eyes met, everything else dulled. She looked different, less composed, like she'd been holding something back and finally decided to stop. You're distracted, she said. So are you, I replied. Her mouth curved, slow and deliberate. "Come with me." It wasn't a request, and I didn't hesitate. The hallway was narrow, dimly lit, smelling faintly of dust and old wood. She stopped just before the door, close enough that I could feel the heat from her body. My back brushed the wall. Her hand rested beside my shoulder, not touching me, but close enough that every nerve in my body registered the distance. "I shouldn't do this," she said. My breath caught. "Then don't." She didn't move away. Instead, she lifted her hand and placed it lightly at my waist. The touch was careful, almost reverent, like she was testing whether I'd disappear under her fingers. I didn't. I leaned into it, just enough to let her know. Her eyes darkened. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't clumsy. It was slow, deliberate, the kind of kiss that carried intent in every second of contact. Her lips were warm, firm, tasting faintly of whiskey and restraint. I inhaled sharply when she deepened it, her thumb pressing into my hip as if to steady us both. My hands found her jacket, gripping the fabric, pulling her closer without asking. She responded immediately, her body fitting against mine with surprising ease. The world narrowed to breath, heat, and the quiet sound she made when I kissed her back just as firmly. When we finally pulled apart, my forehead rested against hers. My heart was racing. "That answers something," I murmured. She exhaled a shaky laugh. "It complicates everything." "Good," I said. "I don't do simple." She studied my face, searching for something I didn't fully understand. Then she stepped back, breaking the moment before it could tip into something deeper. "Come home with me," she said quietly. "Not for what you're thinking." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't know what I'm thinking," she smiled. "I have a pretty good idea." Her apartment was clean, modern, overlooking the city in a way my life never had. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, shoes off, tension thick enough to touch. She poured wine. I watched her hands, precise, controlled, betraying nothing. When she sat beside me, her thigh brushed mine, and neither of us moved away. We talked. About nothing. About everything. Music, silence, loneliness. The kind that doesn't announce itself. At some point, she reached for my hand, her fingers laced with mine naturally, like it had always been that way. The intimacy of the gesture hit harder than the kiss. "I don't want to hurt you," she said suddenly. I turned to face her. "You haven't." She hesitated. "I might." "Then don't disappear," I said. "That's usually when it hurts." Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought she'd pull away. Instead, she leaned in and kissed me again, slower this time, deeper, her free hand sliding to the back of my neck. The kiss grew heavier, more deliberate, until I felt it everywhere. She pressed her forehead to mine, breath uneven. "I can stay," she whispered. "Just not all the way. Not yet." I nodded. "That's enough." I left before morning, my body humming, my thoughts tangled. The kiss replayed itself on my skin like a promise that hadn't decided what it wanted to be. As I walked home, one truth settled heavy and undeniable in my chest. Whatever Evelyn was hiding, I was already in too deep to walk away. Evelyn didn't disappear after that night. She came back to the bar like nothing had changed, which somehow made everything feel different. The kiss lived between us, unspoken but present, changing the way we stood, the way we looked at each other, the way my skin reacted when she got too close. There was no pretending it hadn't happened. We just didn't name it yet. She waited for me after every set. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. Some nights, she sat quietly, watching me like the music belonged to her as much as it did to me. I felt bolder when she was there. My voice leaned into the songs instead of holding back. I caught myself singing for her without meaning to, and knowing she knew it. The physical awareness was constant now. Her knee brushing mine under the table. Her hand at my lower back when she guided me through a crowded space. None of it accidental. None of it rushed. Every touch landed exactly where it was meant to, slow enough to let the anticipation build. One night, after the bar closed, she asked, "Can I stay?" The question was simple. The meaning wasn't. I nodded, and we walked to my apartment instead of hers. The place felt smaller than usual with her inside it, my life suddenly visible in a way that made my chest tighten. She took it in quietly, the old couch, the guitar by the window, the stack of unfinished lyrics on the table. "You live honestly," she said. "I don't know how to do it any other way," I replied. We sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that our shoulders touched. The silence stretched, heavy but unafraid. She turned to me slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. The kiss this time was different. It was deeper, more certain. Her hands framed my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones like she was memorizing me. I kissed her back without restraint, letting my body lean into hers. She exhaled softly against my mouth, a sound that sent heat straight through me. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine. "Tell me to stop," she whispered. "Don't," I said. That was all it took. She kissed me again, and this time her hands moved with intention. Down my arms, along my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. I felt her breath hitch when my fingers slid beneath her jacket, when my palms learned the shape of her back. We moved slowly, deliberately, like neither of us wanted to rush the discovery. Clothes came off in pieces, not dramatic, not frantic, just honest. Skin against skin, warmth. The quiet sound of our breathing filling the room. When we lay down together, it wasn't about urgency, it was about closeness. Her hand traced the line of my spine, sending shivers through me. I kissed her neck, her shoulder, learning the places that made her sigh. Every reaction felt like permission. We didn't rush into anything explicit. We explored, touched, pressed closer. The intimacy settled deep, unhurried and consuming. When she finally pulled me against her, my head resting on her chest, I felt something unfamiliar and dangerous. Safe. She stayed the night. In the morning, sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, painting her skin in gold. She watched me wake up, eyes soft, unguarded. For a moment, she looked like someone who belonged here, like someone who could stay. I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to know who she really was, why she avoided certain topics, why tension still lived behind her eyes. But I didn't. Because the way she kissed me goodbye, slow, lingering, full of promise, told me one thing clearly. Whatever this was becoming, it wasn't going to let me walk away untouched. We slept together again, not in the way people imagine when they hear those words, but in the way that changes something quietly. Evelyn stayed more often than she left. Some nights we fell asleep tangled, others just close enough to feel each other breathing. Mornings came with shared coffee, bare feet on cold floors, the soft normality of two lives beginning to overlap without asking permission. The intimacy shifted from heat to presence. We learned each other's rhythms, the way she liked silence in the mornings, the way I needed noise to think. She listened when I talked about music like it mattered, like my words weren't just filler between songs. When she asked questions, they weren't casual. They were precise, intentional. It made me feel seen in a way that had nothing to do with desire. She never talked about her work, not really. She said vague things, consulting, traveling, helping artists sometimes. It didn't feel like a lie, but it didn't feel like the truth either. When I asked follow-up questions, she deflected gently, changing the subject with a touch to my wrist or a kiss to my temple. I let it go more often than I should have. Because I liked who I was with her. I liked the way my songs sounded fuller after she listened to them. I liked how she challenged me without trying to reshape me. Sometimes she'd sit on the floor while I played, head resting against the edge of the bed, eyes closed like she was absorbing something she couldn't afford to name. Those moments felt intimate in a way sex never had. One night, after the bar closed early, she asked me to play the song I never finished, the one I always skipped. I hesitated. "It's not ready. Neither are most honest things," she replied. So I played it. My voice shook at first, then settled. The lyrics were raw, unpolished, full of a younger version of me who still believed opportunity was something you could earn by wanting it badly enough. When I finished, the room stayed quiet. Evelyn didn't speak right away. She crossed the room and sat beside me, her hand finding mine with certainty. "You were brave," she said softly. I laughed without humor. I was naive. She shook her head. "Those aren't the same." Something in her voice cracked, just slightly. That was when I noticed it, the tension she carried when I talked about the past, the way her jaw tightened when I mentioned contracts that vanished, doors that closed without explanation. She never asked for details, never pressed. But she listened too closely, like every word landed heavier than it should have. "You deserved more," she said once quietly. I looked at her. "Everyone says that." She met my gaze, eyes dark with something unreadable. "I mean it." The words stayed with me longer than they should have. Days passed, then weeks. Our lives blurred together in small, dangerous ways. She started leaving a toothbrush at my place. I stopped flinching when she touched my back in public. I caught myself thinking in plurals, we, us, before I realized what I was doing. It scared me. Not because I didn't want it, because I did. One afternoon, while she showered, her phone lit up on the nightstand. A name flashed across the screen. One I hadn't heard in years. One I hadn't thought about since the night my career quietly ended. My stomach dropped. I didn't open the message. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. Something I'd buried deep inside me stirred awake, sharp and sudden. When Evelyn stepped out of the bathroom, towel around her shoulders, she smiled at me like nothing was wrong. I smiled back. But for the first time since she walked into the Bluebird, I wasn't sure what I was standing on anymore. I didn't confront her right away. I carried the name with me for days, heavy and sharp, lodged somewhere between my ribs and my throat. I told myself coincidences happened, that people shared contacts, that I was reading into nothing. But every time Evelyn touched me, every time she said my name like it mattered, the doubt pressed harder. She felt it before I said anything. "You're distant," she said one night, as we lay side by side, the room quiet, except for the hum of traffic outside. Her fingers traced slow circles on my arm, a familiar gesture that usually grounded me. This time, it didn't. "I'm tired," I replied. She didn't argue. She never did. Instead, she studied my face, searching. The silence between us stretched, filled with things neither of us wanted to name. I turned away, pretending sleep would come. It didn't. The truth arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I was at the bar early, setting up my guitar, when Mark, the bartender who'd known me longer than most, mentioned her casually. "Your friend's impressive," he said. Didn't realize she was that Evelyn Hart. My hands froze. "What do you mean?" I asked too quickly. He shrugged. "Music producer. Big deal in Nashville. She was in that panel years back, right? The one that shut down half those indie contracts." The room tilted. I didn't finish setting up. I didn't sing that night. I walked home on autopilot, every memory rearranging itself with brutal clarity. The email, the silence, the vanished calls, the polite rejection that never named a reason. Her words echoed back to me, twisted now with cruel precision. "You shouldn't be singing here." I waited for her in my apartment. When Evelyn walked in, she knew immediately. She stopped just inside the door, reading the set of my shoulders, the way I didn't move to greet her. "What happened?" she asked softly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Did you know me?" I asked, "before you walked into the Bluebird?" She didn't answer. The silence was enough. "You ruined my career," I said. The words tasted bitter, final. "You sat in a room years ago and decided my voice wasn't worth the risk. You disappeared me." Her face drained of color. "I didn't know it was you," she said finally. Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. "I swear to you, Hannah, I didn't." "That doesn't change what you did." She took a step closer. I stepped back. "I was wrong," she said. "About the industry. About control. About what mattered. I've lived with that decision longer than you think. Did you recognize me?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "Not until it was already too late." The admission hit harder than a lie would have. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "So this was what then? Guilt? Curiosity? Fixing a mistake you didn't expect to fall into your bed?" Her jaw tightened. "This was never a strategy. Then why are you here?" I demanded. "Because I fell in love with you," she said, the words breaking through her composure at last. "Not the singer, not the story. You." The room went quiet. I felt the truth of it, and hated that I did. "Get out," I said. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She just nodded, eyes wet, shoulders heavy, and turned toward the door. At the threshold, she stopped. "I won't disappear again," she said. "But I'll give you space if that's what you need." The door closed behind her. I slid down against it, breath shaking, chest aching with something far worse than anger. Because losing her hurt, and realizing that didn't make her innocent only made everything harder to survive. The bar announced its closing the same week Evelyn left. It felt almost cruel in its timing, like the world had decided to strip me of everything familiar at once. A handwritten sign appeared near the entrance of the Bluebird. "Final week. Thank you for the music." I stared at it longer than I should have, reading it again and again, as if the words might change. I kept singing. Routine became my shield. I showed up early, tuned my guitar, avoided eye contact. The room felt larger without her in it, emptier in a way that echoed. People applauded. People smiled. None of it reached me. I sang through the ache because stopping felt worse. Nights blurred together. I slept alone, the other side of the bed untouched. Sometimes I woke reaching for her before remembering she wasn't there. The memory hit every time like a quiet impact. No explosion, just a steady collapse inward. I told myself I was angry. That story was easier to live with than the truth. Anger had edges. Anger could be held. What I actually felt was grief. Grief for something real, something unfinished, something I hadn't protected because I didn't know I needed to. Mark pulled me aside after a set one night. "You okay?" he asked gently. I nodded. Lied. Just tired. He didn't push. He slid me a drink I didn't ask for and let the silence sit between us. People who've been around long enough know when not to fill it. On the last night of the Bluebird, the bar was fuller than usual, not crowded, just present. Familiar faces, a few strangers, the kind of crowd that comes to say goodbye without knowing exactly what they're mourning. I sang the song I'd written at 22. The one that never found a studio, the one I'd carried like a secret apology to myself. My voice wavered at first, then settled into something steady, grounded. The lyrics landed differently now. Less hopeful, more honest. When I finished, the applause lingered. I didn't look for Evelyn. I didn't expect to see her. I was done with expecting anything. Afterward, I sat alone at the bar long after everyone left. The lights dimmed, chairs stacked. The Bluebird exhaled its final breath around me. I rested my forehead against the cool wood, letting the stillness sink in. I thought about walking away from music entirely, about finding something quieter, safer. Something that wouldn't keep reopening old wounds. The idea didn't feel like relief. It felt like surrender, and for the first time, I wasn't sure which one I needed. Days passed. I sang nowhere. I wrote nothing. I moved through my apartment like a guest in my own life. Music sat untouched in the corner, waiting without judgment. Silence settled in its place. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. A message followed. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to trust me. I just want to hear you sing, one last time." No signature. I didn't need one. I set the phone down, heart racing, anger flaring. Something softer pushing underneath it. The past wasn't done with me. Neither was she. And I had no idea yet whether opening that door again would save me or finish breaking what was left. She didn't come back the way I expected. No grand entrance, no entourage, no confident posture that once made rooms bend around her. When I opened the door, Evelyn stood there alone, hands visible, shoulders slightly slumped, like someone who had already accepted rejection before it happened. "I won't stay long," she said. "I just wanted to see you." I stepped aside without answering. She walked into the apartment slowly, as if she remembered every corner. The couch, the guitar by the window, the space she used to occupy so naturally now felt fragile. Temporary. She didn't touch anything. She didn't sit until I gestured. We stood across from each other, a careful distance between us. "I'm not here as a producer," she said quietly. "I'm not here with offers or plans. I'm here because leaving without saying this was the one thing I couldn't live with." I folded my arms. "Say it then." She inhaled. "I was wrong. About your voice, about the system, about myself." Her eyes lifted to mine, and I won't defend it. I won't soften it. I made a decision years ago that hurt real people. You were one of them. The honesty caught me off guard. "No excuses?" I asked. "No," she said. "Just responsibility." Silence stretched between us, not empty, heavy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. "Why come back now?" "Because I heard you sing that night," she replied. Not as someone who could be fixed, but as someone who survived me. Her voice wavered. "And because loving you without saying the truth felt like another kind of violence." The word landed hard. I turned toward the window, staring out at the street. When I spoke, my voice was steady but thin. "You don't get to undo what you did." "I know," she said. "I'm not asking to." I faced her again. "Then what do you want?" Her answer was immediate. "To stay. In whatever way you allow. To listen. To carry the weight without asking you to make it lighter." Something in my chest shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. "Sit," I said finally. She did. I picked up my guitar without thinking. My hands knew what to do, even if my heart didn't. I played quietly at first, then louder, letting the sound fill the room. She didn't interrupt. She didn't close her eyes. She listened like someone who understood the cost of being allowed back in. When I finished, she didn't clap. "That song," she said softly, "was never meant to disappear." "I know," I replied. She stayed. Not the night, just the moment. Tea instead of wine, distance instead of touch. When she left, she didn't ask when she'd see me again, but the next evening, She was outside the old bar, and the night after that, she didn't push. She didn't speak unless I did. Slowly, against my own defenses, I noticed the difference between control and presence. She had shed one. She was learning the other. One night, after I finished singing in a borrowed space across town, she reached for my hand. "May I?" she asked. I let her. The touch was simple, careful, real. And in that quiet contact, I realized something that scared me more than anger ever had. If I let her back in now, it wouldn't be because she took something from me. It would be because I was choosing her. The owner called it a farewell night. Nothing fancy, no posters, no press release. Just a handwritten note taped to the door. "Last night. Come if you want to say goodbye." The kind of message meant for regulars, for people who already knew what they were losing. I didn't expect much. Neither did he. But when I arrived, the room felt different. Chairs were filled. People stood along the walls. Faces I recognized, and many I didn't. Musicians from other bars, a few people from out of town. The air buzzed with a low, anticipatory hum, like something important was about to happen, even if no one could quite name it. I went backstage and sat alone, guitar resting against my knee. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. This place had held me when nothing else did. It had been small, imperfect, stubborn, like me. I didn't want to say goodbye quietly. When my name was called, the room hushed. I stepped into the light and looked out over the crowd. For a second, my breath caught. The bar was full, more than I'd ever seen it. Not loud, attentive, present. I searched the room without meaning to. That's when I saw her. Evelyn stood near the bar, just like the first night, but she wasn't alone. Around her were people I didn't know personally, but recognized instinctively. Musicians, independent producers, a few journalists who looked more curious than calculating. No cameras, no flash, just attention, the kind that comes from someone saying, "You need to hear this." Our eyes met. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just nodded once, like she was keeping a promise. My fingers tightened around the guitar. I sang the song I wrote when I was 22. The one that never found a studio. The one I stopped playing because it hurt too much to keep hoping. The lyrics poured out of me now, raw, unpolished, alive. My voice didn't reach for perfection. It reached for truth. I felt every word land, felt the room lean in with it. Halfway through, I almost lost the melody. Not because I was nervous, but because I understood what this moment was. Not a rescue, not a second chance handed down from above. A choice. Mine. Hers. Ours. I finished in silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the applause came. Slow at first, then rising, filling the space until it pressed against my chest. I didn't bow. I didn't look away. My eyes stayed on Evelyn. She stepped forward. The room quieted again as she climbed onto the small stage. No microphone. No practiced ease. Just a woman standing where she once held power, and choosing not to use it. "I heard that voice years ago," she said, her voice steady but unguarded. "And I chose fear over courage." She turned to the crowd. "I'm not here as a producer. I'm not here to offer anything. I'm here to say that I was wrong, and that this voice deserves to be heard without permission." She looked at me then. "And I'm here because I love this woman. Not for what she represents, but for who she is." My vision blurred. She stepped closer, her hand lifting toward my face, but stopping just short, giving me space to choose. "You don't have to forgive me tonight," she said softly. "Just let me stay." The room held its breath, and in that stillness, with every eye on us, I realized this wasn't the end of something. It was the moment everything finally stood still, long enough for the truth to speak out loud. The applause faded slowly, like the room itself was reluctant to let the moment end. I stood there, heart pounding, the echo of Evelyn's words still ringing in my ears. For years, I'd imagined 100 versions of closure, anger, vindication, silence. None of them looked like this. None of them involved the woman who once shut a door now standing in front of me, asking for nothing but permission to stay. I stepped closer. Not because the crowd was watching, not because it felt poetic, because my body already knew the answer my mind was still catching up to. I lifted my hand and rested it against her cheek. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. "Stay," I said. The word was quiet. It didn't need to be louder. Her eyes softened, and when she leaned in, the kiss was unhurried, intentional, full of everything we'd broken and rebuilt between us. The room erupted, but the sound felt distant, secondary. All I felt was her warmth, the steady certainty of her hands at my waist. The way she kissed me, like this wasn't an ending but a beginning she planned to protect. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For choosing me anyway." That night didn't turn into a deal or a headline. People came up to talk, to listen, to say they'd felt something real. Evelyn stayed beside me the entire time, not leading, not explaining, just present. When the Bluebird finally closed its doors for good, we walked out together, hand in hand, into a night that felt wide open. We took our time after that, no rush, no grand announcements. We recorded a small session independently. My songs, exactly as they were meant to sound. Some doors opened, others didn't. For the first time, it didn't feel like survival depended on which one stayed closed. A year later, I stood on a stage I once believed belonged to other people. The Grand Ole Opry wasn't loud in the way I expected. It was reverent, focused. When I stepped into the light, the hush felt familiar now, not intimidating, but welcoming. I scanned the wings and found Evelyn there, hands clasped tightly, eyes bright with nerves she no longer hid. Before I sang, I spoke. "This song is for the woman who taught me that talent without love is just noise," I said, "and that some voices only need to be heard once, by the right person." I sang like I always had, honest, unpolished, mine. After the show, we walked through Nashville's quiet streets, the night warm and forgiving. She slipped her fingers through mine, grounding and sure. When we stopped beneath a streetlight, she turned to me, suddenly serious. "Still think it was luck," she asked, "that I walked into that bar?" I smiled, noticing the simple ring on my finger catch the light. "No," I said, "it was a late choice." She kissed me then, soft, certain, unafraid, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where my voice belonged.